Okay, folks, we are going to get started. Thanks to all of you for giving us some time today. I know we're all busy in this industry, right? So anytime somebody gives me a little bit of time to present and talk, I'm appreciative. So thank you so much for that. See some names I recognize, see some new names. So great to have you all here today with us. This is being recorded, so if you do want to go back and check out the presentation at a later date, you'll have the ability to do so. These are generally stored on our website, so you can go to the vbshop.com and you'll be able to access it there. With that said, this is a monthly webinar series that we hold, typically on long-term care, life with long-term care topics. And we'll get to today's topic here in just a minute. I want to just, for those of you that are maybe new, introduce myself. I'm Mike Walker. I am the president of the Voluntary Benefit Shop. My contact information's here. We do one thing and one thing only, folks. We help consultants like yourselves bring these life with long-term care solutions to their clients in a way that creates tremendous response and tremendous results. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go here. But the main focus of today is when standalone long-term care goes away, what do we do? Like, what do we do? A lot of organizations are dealing with this right now. And we're going to talk about how to leverage life with LTC solutions in that scenario. So let's give a little bit of background here as we talk about this. So the reality is that even before the big thing from last year, the end of last year was Unum no longer accepting any new applications in their group long-term care clients. Even before that, there were very, very limited standalone long-term care insurance options. So those of you that have been in the business for a while, you probably remember, like I do, in the 90s and the 2000s, the early 2000s, that there were many, many companies that sold standalone long-term care insurance, like literally more than 100 on the standalone market on the individual side. Now on the group side, there was certainly far fewer, but there was roughly maybe 10 companies that did some group long-term care business. There's a lot of different ones, Transamerica, Unum, just to name a couple of them, many other ones. And slowly but surely, as we went into the 2000s, into the 2010s, those carriers got out of the market. Right. In fact, Unum was the last one that was really accepting new applications, to my knowledge. They were accepting new applications on some cases, but they sent out notices in the fourth quarter of those cases saying, hey, effective February 1st, we are accepting no new applications for long-term care. Now, they hadn't been taking any new group cases in years, but they were still accepting applications in some of their group cases, not all, but some. But effective February 1st, they're no longer doing that. And so when that happened, we got a rush of requests from the brokers that we work with throughout the country, because that's what we do, is we work with consultants and agencies throughout the country to help them with, life with long-term care needs. And we got a rush of requests from brokers like, hey, what do we do? And so we had to really dig in on some options with that. Now, the reality is in today's world, as probably most of you know, there's very, very few standalone options. There's a few carriers that still do it on the individual side. There's nobody that does it on a group side. But those individual options that are out there are pretty restrictive from an underwriting perspective. People have to jump through a lot of underwriting hoops to be able to get coverage and that type of thing. And they're not really, functional from a group perspective, right? They're fine if I'm an individual and I'm in good health, right? And I'm proactive and seek it out. I can get it if I'm in good health. But from a group perspective, they're not really viable options. So the reality is that's a huge hole in the marketplace. Now, the other reality is that there is a huge desire for a long-term care solution. And these life with long-term care solutions have really been growing over the last few years. The sale of those products has been in the 20 to 30% range year over year for the last 4 or 5 years. And if you look at the consumer attitude stats, there's really a lot of positive sentiment out there about people wanting these options. According to Eastbridge, 36% of employees surveyed wish that their employer offered long-term care. And look at the generational mix. It's just not the Gen X's and the boomers. It's also the Gen Z's and the millennials. So very broad desire. 29% of companies say they intend to offer long-term care in the future, and 51% of employees, when surveyed, said that they would be interested in buying it if their company offered it on a voluntary basis. So there is a big desire for a long-term care solution. And then, of course, from a need perspective, all of us in the industry probably know these stats well, but 70% of us after the age of 65 will need services. And boy, is it an expensive proposition, right? Here's a snapshot of costs. In-home care is around $80,000 a year, nursing home care, upwards of $130,000 a year. And the estimated cost of care for the final 5 years of life for a person with dementia is about $367,000. So big costs out there for folks. And so there's a big dilemma out there. And these hybrid products, folks, are really, really appealing. We're going to give you some examples of how we've used these in some scenarios, but the hybrid products are really appealing for a number of reasons. Number one, 100% of policyholders are going to receive a benefit, either because they pass away and the family's going to get the death benefit, or because they're going to need long-term care and then benefits are going to be paid. You have guaranteed acceptance underwriting. People are able to get a very high level of coverage without having to answer any health questions. Fixed premiums. They're able to lock in a rate that they can keep for the rest of their lives. The plans are indemnity products, not reimbursement products. So it's going to pay benefits regardless of the cost of service. That's really important for in-home care scenarios where maybe my spouse is my caregiver and I'm not going to get a bill for that, right? But these plans can even pay benefits in those informal care scenarios. And a lot of the plan structures accumulate cash value over time, like a whole life or universal life plan would. And of course, the plans are portable, so I can typically keep them for the rest of my life at the same rate with the same benefits, even into retirement. And so these hybrid products are super, super appealing to people. Now, the plan structures, just to kind of give you a quick snapshot of how they look. They all are going to have a death benefit. So when I pass away, my beneficiary is going to get a death benefit, just like you would expect life insurance to work. But then at the bottom, you'll see they also have long-term care benefits associated with them. And the long-term care benefit is typically going to be a multiple of the death benefit. So in most circumstances, the long-term care benefit is going to be 2 times the death benefit. So if I choose a $100,000 life insurance policy, I'm typically going to have $200,000 worth of long-term care benefits. And in many instances, still have a death benefit available when I pass. So a $100,000 policy in many instances would have the possibility to pay out $300,000 of benefits between a long-term care benefit and a life insurance benefit as well, right? So just kind of general plan structure, and that's not really what today's webinar is about, but just for anybody that's new to the concept, I wanted to give you just a little bit of an overview. So as I mentioned, in November and December, we got a ton of emails from our broker partners around the country that said, "Hey, my client just got this letter from Unum. They're not accepting any more applications after February 1st." Now, people that have coverage, they can keep it, but they can't change it, and we can't offer it to any more new hires, and all that type of thing. And so, what do, right? And so really what we told organizations is they really had 2 options, right? Like they could leave the standalone long-term care in place. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because people will never get those types of plan structures again, more than likely, definitely not on a group setting. And they could keep those plans in place and then bring in a life with long-term care option as a buy-up. And also what would be available to new hires moving forward. And many organizations, did elect to go that route. And the other option is you could replace that standalone long-term care with a life with long-term care option. Now, there's some challenges with that. We're going to talk a little bit about strategy with that and what that looks like and that type of thing. And I'd say fewer organizations went that route, but certainly some that were employer paid went that route for some strategic reasons, right? And we'll talk a little bit about why that may be. So I'm going to show you a couple of, examples of cases here that we worked on that had exactly these types of scenarios. And then I'll show you a couple of other scenarios as well. So this is a client that we recently presented to. They currently fund standalone long-term care for 28 executives. It's an executive carve out, I guess you would call it. And the amount of coverage that they provide is $3,000 a month of LTC benefits for 2 years. Okay. So essentially, they're providing employees with a bucket of $72,000 of employer paid long-term care benefit. Now, employees could buy up from there, at the original enrollment time period if they wanted to, they could buy up. But this was the employer kind of base level of coverage that they were providing. And so then our charge was, if we do replace this, like, what does that look like? Like, what are the options for replacing this? And so we work with all of the carriers that have this product. And so we went out to the market. There's certainly, fewer that are going to cover, 28 total employees, right? Like, not all the carriers will go down that low, but there are some that will. And so we went out to the marketplace, secured the proposals, and applied our block underwriting offers, and then came back with some suggestions. Now, I want you to understand that what we're looking at here are some options of a $35,000 life insurance benefit, which would create a $70,000 long-term care benefit. And again, remember, that's because we're trying to replicate this $72,000 in total employee benefit, total employer paid long-term care benefit. And that's about as close as we were going to get with that. So it's a $35,000 life benefit, $70,000 LTC benefit, because typically you buy this in $5,000 increments. And so a couple of different options through the standard here, and I'll explain kind of what these are. Now, number one, you see there at the bottom, there's one employee for standalone that has standalone coverage that couldn't be covered because they're beyond the eligibility age, meaning they're currently older than 70, okay, because that's the eligibility age with the standard. Some of you may know it as Allstate because it's the Allstate, whole life plan or term plan, but they were, of course, bought by Standard. They've kind of rebranded over to the Standard now, so we're calling them the Standard here. Now, you can see that this would be the monthly premium for those 27 policies on 3 different options. You have 2 whole life options. Now, the first whole life option here has the base level life and the $70,000 LTC, but it doesn't have the death benefit restoration. So what that means is that utilizing the LTC benefit reduces the death benefit. So if I use all the LTC and then I pass, there's no death benefit left to pay my family. Now, the middle one here includes the death benefit restoration. So in this scenario, I could use all the LTC benefits, all 70,000, and when I pass away, my family would still get that $35,000 life insurance benefit. Now you can see the difference in premiums there. Whoa, sorry about that. You can see the difference in premiums there is incredibly slight. Like, you're talking about less than $70 a month, right? So there's really no reason not to go with the center one if you decide to go with this plan, not to go with the center one. And so my point with this is that, a lot of times people will try to look at those plans without the death benefit restoration. It's always a better dollar value to include the death benefit restoration, whether you're going employer paid or whether you're going employee paid or a combination of both. Always include the death benefit restoration if you're in a state that has that option. Most states do, New York being the exception, or the big exception. So there's that. And then the standard also has a term life option that includes the extension and the restoration. And you can see that the total premium for that is even lower, $2,100. Now, the downside of that term life option is that it does end at age 100. Okay, it does end at age 100, and if I live past age 100, my coverage ends. Versus those whole life options, they last forever. They're there till age 120, so I don't have to worry about the coverage going away. Now, we looked at a couple of other carrier options as well. Transamerica, same deal. They have a couple different options. The first one doesn't have the death benefit restoration. The second one does have the death benefit restoration. Or I'm sorry, none of these have the death benefit restoration. I apologize. But the downside of this was that, again, there's some employees that can't be covered under options 1 here and option 3 over here with Trustmark The option in the middle is the only one that could cover all 28 employees because it does allow for coverage for enrollment up through the age of 75. And so you can see, the lowest cost tier option is about 1,800, but of course there's 3 employees that aren't eligible. The one that can cover all employees, we could get that coverage for $3,000 monthly. Okay. Now, to understand kind of how this looks in terms of what they were paying for employer paid, this is going to be for employer paid LTC, for the base level LTC that they were offering through Unum. This is going to be significantly more expensive than what they're paying now, probably double the cost. However, however, with those Unum plans, they continue to get hit with rate increases throughout the years, right? Versus this is locking in a set cost, and this cost will not increase, right? So they are able to plan a little bit better for the future. And so you did have some organizations that decided to go this route from a replacement perspective because they could lock in a rate they knew wasn't going to increase. And number two, they're actually providing an additional benefit. They're actually providing the life insurance benefit on top of the long-term care. So they're actually getting more benefits for the buck. And also, the plans also typically accumulate cash value as well. At least 5 of the 6 did. So a lot of different options there. And so those are the type of things that we show organizations when they're trying to figure out, like, how do we get away from the standalone long-term care? What can we bring in for new hires? And that is what it looked like for that particular group. Now, let me show you a couple of other strategies here too, for groups that are maybe looking at, employer paid LTC. Here's an option where an employer can buy a base level of coverage for all employees. And let's take a look at what that looks like and why somebody might do that at a low level, even at a really low level. And we'll talk about why that is. So we get, very preferred underwriting offers from the carriers. So in general, really any size group, this is about what the underwriting offer is we're going to get. We're going to get about $200,000 worth of life, $400,000 worth of long-term care, guaranteed issue, no health questions. There's going to be some GI for spouses and that type of thing as well. But then the most important thing we get is we get this guaranteed issue buy-up provision. And what this provision says is that if I take any level of coverage year one, I can buy all the way up to the guaranteed issue amount at a subsequent open enrollment, and I don't have to answer any health questions. Okay. So if I'm an employee of an organization offering this and I'm on a tight budget, maybe year one, I only take, $10,000 or $25,000 worth of coverage. 5 years from now, I could maybe have a better budgetary situation, and maybe I've had a health concern. I can still buy all the way up to the $200,000, $400,000 mark, and I don't have to answer any health questions. Okay. So super valuable provision for somebody to be able to lock in their ability to buy up without underwriting in the future. Now, also, this brings about some interesting strategies, right? So if I'm an employer, what if I just bought a really low base level for employees, right? And then that would give them the ability to buy up in the future. So I could even buy just 10,000 of life, 20,000 of LTC, and give my employees the ability to buy up in the future without answering any health questions. So like, here's an example, again, this is with the standard here. This is an organization that had 92 employees looking at buying a base level of coverage. And so we provided them with 3 options. What if you just bought 10,000 of life, 20,000 of LTC for all employees? That would cost about $1,400 monthly. Or what if they went to 50,000 of life, 100,000 of long-term care for all 92 employees? That would cost about $7,000 monthly, right? And so they could certainly buy other amounts than this. This is just to give you an idea of what the kind of cost could look like for that. We have seen a growing number of organizations looking into these employer paid options. This was what kind of the options for that group look like for the standard. This was the whole life plan through the standard. And then we also ran it with Transamerica. You can see with Transamerica, the rates are, fairly similar, but those are going to be your 2 main carriers kind of in that under 100 life space. And then also, Trustmark has some options for that too in the employer paid space, although you have to do at least 25,000 with Trustmark, you can't do the $10,000 mark with employer paid. And so this kind of shows you what those costs could look like for them as well. So anyway, the strategy being like an employer buys a low base level, even if we go back to just 10,000, and then gives employees the opportunity to buy up on a voluntary basis. And the great part is that then employees can buy up at any future open enrollment, and they'll be able to buy up without answering any health questions. Okay. So very, very, valuable kind of innovative way to do it. Let me show you a case study of a group here that we did that did some employer paid. Now, this is a 48-person private equity firm, pretty big incomes there. And it's out in California. Actually, we work with agencies and brokers all over the country. This one was in California. The organization paid for $50,000 worth of life, $100,000 worth of long-term care for all employees, and then employees could buy up from there. 17 of the 48 bought up. That's pretty normal type of percentage that we see in this scenario. The total premium created was about $128,000 in total premium. And first year comp to our broker partner on that was about $51,000 in first year comp. Okay. And so that's just one example of employee paid coverage. We're actually working on a law firm right now that's about 500 benefit eligible. They're going to do employer paid for a couple of classes. We're working with a larger organization, tech firm with over 1,000 employees that's going to do a base level of coverage for all employees. So all different case sizes can look at these strategies. We just showed you some easy ones here in the smaller group market so that you could see, like, even in the small group market, it is a viable option. And even in the small group market, not only can it provide some great benefits for your clients, but it also can provide some, nice compensation for your organization as well. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if anyone has any questions. You can certainly enter questions into chat for me to answer. So please enter your questions into chat now, and we'll close out here with a couple of additional pieces of information. So folks, we do have a couple of other webinars coming up here over the next couple of months. In March, our webinar will be about the public sector, municipalities. Municipalities, we see them adding life with long-term care to their benefit strategy more now than ever before. I feel like we get a new municipal client about every week right now, whether that's a city government, a county government, a school system. We get about a new one every week right now. And so a lot of public sector business happening. And then in April, we're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of designing life with long-term care benefits and the employer paid and executive carve out scenarios, right? We're going to talk about some different approaches, touched on a little bit today. We'll get into it in more detail in April and show you some additional strategies. And then Chelsea, do we have any questions in chat as of yet?
No, we do not.
Okay, folks, feel free to enter a question into chat, or I will also allow you to unmute after these last few slides. If you all aren't familiar with our firm, the Voluntary Benefit Shop, all we do every day is work with consultants like you all to help bring these life with long-term care solutions to their clients. And when we talk to agencies and brokers around the country, we hear very similar stories. Everybody understands that life with long-term care is a great product. It's a very underprepared for need in the industry. It's a great revenue opportunity for an agency. And all of that's true. The problem is that what most agencies or consultants don't have is a clear process to introduce, position, and execute on life with long-term care, especially when it comes to the long-term care education piece. That's what we bring to the table, is that long-term care education piece. We're not an enrollment firm. Enrollment is a byproduct of our process. So we certainly handle the enrollment process, but it's really just a byproduct of our process. We're really a strategic LTC marketing partner. And what we bring to the table is three things: a proven process to help you build a meaningful life with LTC sales pipeline, execution on that pipeline. We deal with all the carriers. We'll conduct all the RFP analysis and make a recommendation. And then once the client's ready to move forward, we're going to provide an unmatched employee and engagement campaign that's going to provide or going to create results that are 5 times greater than industry average for life with long-term care. We get the best results in the industry If you ask the carriers, they're going to tell you that same thing. But we get the best results in the industry because our engagement campaign makes LTC real. It explains, how it is or isn't covered by things like Medicare and Medicaid and things of that nature. And that's what we bring to the table. So, folks, with that said, I'll wrap up there. Just see if anyone has any questions. Here's my contact information. If anyone wants to reach out to us, if you're interested in, learning more about life with long-term care and how we can help you utilize it to create a revenue stream, certainly feel free to reach out. And I'll pause just to see if anyone has any questions for us. Are there any questions for us at all? Anyone?
It doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat.
Folks, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for a half hour. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.